Submarines are one of the most controversial classes we have in the game. And there are too many people that just give up, cry, or try to convince everyone that the only counterplay to them is pressing Alt F4. And to those, I'm gonna say, just do not leave this kind of crying comment under my video. Find one about balancing instead, because in this video, I'm not gonna be talking about balance. I'm gonna be talking about how we can deal with submarines with what we are given by wargaming, not what we hypothetically could get. Being a man means going through even the hardest paths if we have to, even if they are made exclusively of broken glass and boiling nails, which kinda describes the feeling of facing a submarine. So let's dive in and start the video. Okay, diving in, let's talk a little bit what submarines are. Submarines are in a nutshell torpedo boats without guns, but with an ability to go invisible on demand and become immune to majority of the armaments we have in the game. They also possess in general two kinds of torpedoes. The normal ones that work basically just the same as British single-fired torps, and the homing kind that is currently causing so many problems in the community. The homing torps are the ones that will turn towards the target that is currently pinged by the submarine, and they can do massive 90-degree turns around islands to hit you basically behind cover. Whenever other ships fail, submarines, easy, no problem. This causes a lot of distress within people, so let's go class by class about what each of us can do to help the other deal with them and maybe make some of their life a little bit more miserable. Let's start with destroyers. Destroyers were meant to be the primary hunters of submarines, but very often they are their biggest prey. Before you equip a destroyer, you need to actually check what kind of normal standard depth charges you are, because some of the DDs fire the depth charges backwards when others fire them forward. Like for example, Hanan fires them forward, while ships like Shimakaze or Gearing fire them backwards. Second, to hunt efficiently a submarine, you're probably gonna need a hydro on your destroyer. If you don't have it, you're gonna struggle with killing them a little bit. So for example, ships like Hoffman, Daring are much more efficient at dealing with subs, because hydro can spot submarine regardless of its depth on 2 or less kilometers, so basically proxy range. However, it's not a good idea to just simply rush the ping indicator at the start of the match, because usually submarine wants you to push into it, and since submarines are basically on par with DDs in terms of speed, it's gonna be very hard for you to actually catch up to it. And then you're probably gonna be facing the entire enemy team that is just waiting for you to make the smallest mistake. So best idea for you to help your team deal with submarines is look out for the pings and all those oil leaks that might be caused by your allies. Try to ping them on the map so they know, and sitting between your allies and the submarine makes you spot the incoming torpedoes, meaning that your allies have much easier time dodging them. But after enemy team abandons the flank, or because maybe they run away, they kite, maybe you deal with them destroyer and they're forced to kite, this is your time to actually hunt down the submarine. If you have the hydro, well, it's gonna be much easier for you to actually find it. If you don't, you're gonna struggle a little bit, but your allies help, the oil leaks and the enemy ping indicator, you might be in a position to actually kill him. When you establish the position of the enemy submarine and you are sure that you can go for a kill, there is one way that is very efficient at doing so. First, you need to remember that submarine torps cannot shotgun anymore, so if you're closer than 3 kilometers, they basically deal no damage. So you want to move as close to the submarine as possible, as fast as possible when you want to go for the kill. But if the torps hit you even 100 meters above 3 kilometers, they probably gonna lead to you being completely obliterated. So what you want to do is go in a zigzagging pattern to help you dodge even the homing torpedoes. Taking them directly to the front is not a great idea. Going in a zigzag allows you to shift your rudder more drastically when the torps are near, making that you are able to dodge all of them. Because homing torpedoes usually have much better turning circle than you. However, they stop homing right around half kilometer away from a destroyer. So what you want to do is you go in a zigzagging pattern, and the moment the torpedoes are close, you stop and turn. If you are going to the left of the submarine, you turn to the right, and when you go to the right, you turn to the left, obviously. Kind of zigzagging pattern is not that difficult to understand. This makes submarine homing torps very inefficient in killing you. The moment you get below 3 kilometers, just ignore the submarine torps unless you're on like 2k HP. Drop the depth charges, eliminate the submarine, GG. When talking about submarines and cruisers, well, this is gonna be a very lengthy discussion because cruisers diverge between themselves a lot in terms of just dealing with subs. Some of them have borderline no ways of dealing with submarines apart from being just upscale DD. For example, Jinan, which is in general just upscale DD, has the same depth charges as majority of the destroyers, but in itself is much bigger, much less maneuverable, and yeah, so basically submarines can do whatever they want around Jinan. But it still has guns, so if submarine is on the surface, it can still gun it down pretty efficiently. Majority of the cruisers are okay-ish in terms of dealing with submarines. Due to them having hydro or radar, they can either detect them or dodge their incoming attacks, and having the plane drop depth charges allows them to somewhat retaliate, but that's not really the greatest way. The greatest way of dealing with submarines is having this little consumable that spots them underwater, and so far only 3 tech trees have those: Zao tech tree, Venezia tech tree, and Cerberus tech tree, with the last one being the most efficient submarine hunter we have in the game at the moment. Those specific cruisers are also generally pretty stealthy, meaning that they can go closer at the start of the battle to support their submarine and their destroyer in dealing with it. Good practice about that is trying to actually first force submarine to go underwater and then spotting it with the consumable. This allows all of your allies to see it and drop their plane depth charges. And since we get to the topic of having plane depth charges, let's talk about them now. Plane dropped SFW usually has around 8 kilometers of range, but it can have 11 kilometers of range on ships like Yamato, for example. It very often comes with 2 charges, but it can also have 3. For example, Cerberus can have 3, but majority of the ships will have 2. On lower tiers, you're gonna drop 1 depth charge bomb per charge, but on higher tiers, it's gonna be 2. When you use a charge of SFW with the planes, you're gonna leave an area in which the depth charges are gonna be dropped by the plane that's coming straight from your ship, and they're gonna explode in 15 seconds. This can be reduced a little bit by the fact that if you drop it much closer to yourself, it's gonna take much less time for the plane to arrive, meaning that the depth charges are gonna drop faster and explode quicker. Knowing that to actually hit enemy submarine, we're gonna need to predict its movements. We're gonna basically need to drop our depth charges in a place when we think it's gonna be in 15 seconds. Which is not really that difficult to do the moment we actually see it, but what to do when we don't? Well, then it's basically guessing, telling by the enemy pings and incoming torpedoes. Pings leave an area that show the direction the submarine is moving, how the ping is dissipating, and around where it is. But the submarine is almost always much further back than the ping actually shows. So if you drop it on the ping, you're probably gonna miss. Other way is that whenever a submarine is damaged, it's gonna start leaking oil, which is gonna leave a black mark on the sea. Submarines can DCP that oil leak, meaning that it's not gonna be visible. But most submarines have only 5-second DCPs, and we have 2 charges of our ASFW. Instead of stacking our ASFW when we don't see the submarine, we should drop one, wait 5 seconds, and drop the other one. Submarines, to completely eliminate the oil leak, need to DCP the moment they get damaged. So by making that little bit of a difference between 2 drops, means that if we hit the first one, even with splash, they're gonna have to DCP the oil leak. And the second is gonna arrive the moment their DCP goes down. Only couple submarines have much longer DCPs, and you're actually gonna need to check it for yourself when you start a battle. Just simply press tab and hover over the DCP. It's gonna show you the max possible value. The moment you see the oil leak, it's kinda easy to track the submarine's movements. All you need to do is imagine yourself a line between the 2 oil leaks and just simply try to predict when the third one is gonna show up and drop your SFW there. Battleships have the hardest time dealing with submarines. They have the plane dropped SFW with the longest range, but at the same time they're the least maneuverable class, with a very big juicy HP pool and very poor concealment as well. They don't even have speed to run away from the submarine, or means to spot it. Except for a couple of BBs that have a hydro, they have absolutely no way of finding it on the flank. The only thing they can do is rely on their allies, enemy submarine pings, to drop the plane dropped SFW like I said in the previous section, and dodge. To make it easier for battleships to dodge submarine homing torps, Wargaming made so that the homing will stop at 2 kilometers away from a battleship. It won't help if you bow into the submarine, but if you're zigzagging, it allows you to actually stop your ship and slightly turn in so that they miss your nose. But very often it's still gonna hit you anyway. So if you were to choose to trade the torpedoes, it's better for them to hit your torpedo protection, as at least that will reduce the incoming damage. However, when playing a battleship, never be afraid to actually shoot at the ping. Well, you're detected anyway, right? If you don't have better target to shoot, you might as well hit an enemy submarine that is on the periscope depth on the surface. It's definitely gonna hurt it more than you doing absolutely nothing. CVs themselves have automated ASFW that works on a mediocre level against submarine, and it doesn't really have that much range. However, thanks to 1 minute automatic DCP, the carrier player has some means of escaping the submarine before it completely kills it. But if the submarine just pops in 6 kilometers away from the CV and fires the non-guiding torps, well, it's basically dead. However, this class allows the team to deal with submarines in a very efficient way, but it requires communication and team play, which very often is completely not present in random games. What am I speaking about here is submarines, regardless of their depth, can spot planes, meaning that the CV player is gonna get a notification the moment the planes get spotted. And what to do is when you fly above your teammates and you know that there's a submarine on the flank, you should ping around the circle when your planes get detected. Planes get detected from 10 kilometers if you're not running concealment. The moment the submarine detects the plane, the plane's notification goes up. You should ping the whole range when the submarine might be and then fly over it. This is gonna at least estimate the position of the enemy submarine. Then what you can do is you go backwards with your planes away and move from this one side to the other side of that semicircle you created before. In this way, you're gonna have two crossing circles you drew on the minimap, making so that you can much easier estimate the position when the submarine is. And then when you do that, you drop your fighters on top of it. In this way, you're forcing submarine to stay completely underwater when it cannot detect your allies. Dropping fighters over it also will allow your DD to move much closer, as enemy CV won't be able to detect it. If an enemy submarine is on a periscope depth, your planes can spot it. And this is a very important part of playing aircraft carrier. Detecting submarines helps your team a ton. Usually your squadron cannot damage it, but there are some exceptions. In the end, I want to leave you with some general tips to deal with submarines regardless of the class you play. First of all is when you're moving, move in a zigzagging pattern. It's gonna make the homing torps much more inefficient in hitting you. Otherwise, you want to try to keep allies between you and the submarine, or an island between you and the submarine, to be much safer in terms of being torpedoed. Use your ASFW whenever it's available and whenever you can actually get to the submarine. Do not waste a single possibility of killing it, as this one possibility might be the only shot you get in the game to deal with it efficiently. And do not be afraid to just shoot a little bit behind ping indicator, especially when you're detected. This way you're at least gonna force enemy submarine to stay below the periscope depth when it's immune to your shells. Submarines usually are pretty fragile but very hard to hit. So the moment submarine gets hit by a single shell, the reaction is probably, oh, I got hit, I need to dive. And that will be it for this episode. Taking a fight against submarines is not the easiest one, and very often it's a very tedious, slow and painful task. But someone has to do it. Submarines are part of this game, and there is no way Wargaming will remove them, so we need to learn how we can deal with them. The only thing we can hope for is better tools for it. If you like this video and you want more, consider subscribing and leaving a like. It's been Senpai Silent. See you next time.